I'm Tom Bodell. I'm a sports reporter for NewsQuest North and East London, primarily working on the Watford Observer and other titles across North London, East London and West Essex.
What subjects did you take at school, and did you think you did anything wrong?
I think for sports journalism there is probably no such thing as doing wrong. When I was at school I tried to take advice from people that were already in the business, and bizarrely enough my boss now actually was one of the people that took the time to reply to me, and he said the exact same thing, which was a rounded variety of subjects. So I took at GCSE, and this is going to be a stretch to remember, English, obviously maths, science, sociology, Spanish, woodwork possibly, and PE. And they didn't necessarily give me the best grounding, I would say. Spanish would have been useful if I'd have kept it up, to have another language. That's something that if you speak to anyone who's higher up the journalism food chain than I am, they would say another language is really handy. But the rest of those probably gave me minimal grounding for it. I think history is the one that people sort of suggest is handy, but it's far from an essential. I think it's worth pointing that out. So I didn't make any mistakes, but maybe I could have picked something, thought about what I was picking more. And then at sixth form, I did English literature and language combined, media studies, which isn't as helpful as you might think. It's just a sort of overview of what media actually contains. Sociology again, because I enjoyed it, and I think that was me. So, and I've failed miserably at politics, there you go. Failed miserably at politics, which was very interesting, great fun, but I was dreadful at it. So probably didn't do anything wrong, but maybe didn't do anything right either, but I guess it worked out in the end.
What would you say would be the ideal courses to take?
I think history is quite handy for context. English literature, English language, obviously important. You know, that's the crux of what you're doing. That is what you're doing day in, day out. But even then, you know, I still don't think they're essentials. When I went to university, I studied sports journalism, and again, I still don't think it is an essential. You can get into journalism with anything up to a point. The thing that you need most of all is your NCTJ qualifications, which is National Council for Training of Journalists, and I did that at university. So I think up to that point, you can probably do anything and get away with it, so to speak, without sort of thinking that you've messed up your chances.
Are there any sacrifices you've had to make to get to this point?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess now that I'm working at NewsQuest, we work Monday to Thursday. And then because we're out doing games on a Saturday, we have Friday off in lieu of the Saturday. So I lose my Saturdays, which means I can't go and watch Watford play, which is my team. But I'm watching other teams play, and we cover Watford anyway. So I guess it's not a huge sacrifice in the grand scheme of things. It does mean, though, more importantly, that I miss out on a lot of things with family and friends, because I am constantly on call, as they call it, which isn't as dramatic as being a doctor and being on call, but when something happens and the boss rings you, then you've got to do something about it. I was out and about the other day, for example, and he rang and said that Leyton Orient, which is one of the clubs we cover, potentially not paid their players' wages for February. So I went to the office and got a number and came home and did that, and that was my day off, kind of gone. So, you know, it's not, you know, I'm not missing the birth of my children or anything like that for the wife that I haven't got yet, but it's, you know, it comes with the territory as well that you are kind of never not working.
What made you want to become a sports journalist?
I liked sport, and I didn't hate writing when I was younger, and I think English was probably my favourite subject when I was in primary school and maybe through secondary school. And I just started doing it one day. I can't remember what prompted it, but I started my own website, and, you know, 50 hits a week maybe kind of level of interest. But I enjoyed it even if no one was reading it. And then from there, I started writing for a bigger website that was already established, Vital Watford, which is part of the Vital Football Network. And when the editor of that left, I took that on, and I just ran with it. I just really, really enjoyed it. I can't really explain. I think it's just using football or using sport in a constructive way. I can't play desperately well. When I was a kid, I was so-so, but you know, these days work and fitness gets in the way of that. So I think this was the next best thing. I think that's probably the same for a lot of people, to be honest, in sports journalism that can't play. So you write instead, but it worked out well.
What other jobs have you had before becoming a sports journalist?
I worked at Marks and Spencer's as a customer assistant on foods and in menswear for about 6 years, and that obviously doesn't really link up at all, but simply the reason is that jobs in journalism are quite hard to come by, and that's, that is increasingly the case. They are becoming harder and harder. Mine, for example, was pretty much gold dust, in as much as it's a very small team. There's 5 of us. We're a centralised news desk for, as I said, a massive area. It's ridiculous in a lot of ways, but that's the trend of journalism. And the guy that was doing it before me left, and I was one of the people interviewed for it. But I was, I was invited to apply for it, kind of thing, rather than it was advertised and I applied. So I think that's a trend as well, that when you've got small teams covering big areas, you've got to get the appointment right. So they maybe look for people that already know, and I had been on work experience there before, so that kind of manifested itself in that way. So yeah, being customer assistant had nothing to do with it, but it was sort of kept me ticking over in the meantime.
What advice would you give to people in school who aspire to be a sports journalist?
Work for free. I think the likelihood of you, and this probably extends to other fields as well, but the likelihood of you getting a job in journalism without working for free in the first place is incredibly remote. When I was on my degree course at university, we had to do 2 weeks, I think it was, a work experience at a newspaper, be it sport, be it news, whatever. So I did a week at the Sunderland Echo. I was at Sunderland University, which was fantastic, and I did a week at the Watford Observer, which was also fantastic. And then when I came back down south after completing my degree and graduating, I was asked back by the Watford Observer to do a couple of weeks, a fortnight's work experience again. And then they asked me to stay on a week after that because someone was off still. And by the time I left, I think I'd done about 5 weeks unpaid work with my own job. And it was hard because I was working kind of 6 till 11 at night, and then having worked 9 till 5. So I was sort of working not 23 hours a day. That's a bit dramatic, but my maths isn't great. Quite a few hours a day, put it that way. But it was well worth it, because when it came to my predecessor, Tom Allnut, leaving, I was one of the people they approached, and it bore the reward. So I reaped the rewards in the end, but you've got to work for free because you have to get your name out there, you have to get your byline out there and prove what you can do. There are thousands and thousands of people writing for free, and only a small percentage of them are ever going to get picked up in all likelihood. So with that in mind, do something different as well. Maybe what I did wasn't especially different, writing about Watford. It's not a Man United, it's not a Chelsea, but they're still not a desperately niche subject area either. So do something different. That Henry Winter told who's a journalist, chief football reporter at the Telegraph, told a friend of mine, if I see another blog about the Premier League, about Premier League football, then I'll kill myself. And obviously it's a bit dramatic, and he's still alive, so he hasn't got to follow through with that threat. But the point still stands. Everybody's doing that. Look for something different, and you're much, much more likely to stand out. I look at guys that I follow on Twitter. There's a chap called Jack Lang who used to be behind the Twitter account Snap Kaka Pop, after Snap, Crackle and Pop, the Rice Krispies slogan. But it was to do with South American football, and he's just been to the last World Cup off the back of that with the Daily Mirror, and now writes for them. So, Brazilian football might not be a massive market for audience, but it was enough to launch his career, and there's so many other examples of that. So something different, work for free. Those would be the bits of advice I'd give.
Do you have any anecdotes or stories about your time working up to your job?
I've covered Barnet, who are in the conference and second at the moment, and their manager is Martin Allen, who's a bit of a character, to say the least. So there are a few things which he's said and done which are a bit off the wall. I'm just trying to think of one which will appeal to everyone, which is quite amusing. Oh, crikey. I was driving up to Lincoln. They were away at Lincoln one Sunday, and I pulled in at a service station to park up and have a break. So it was a long drive, and I was exceedingly bored. And the team coach was there, but I couldn't see anyone, so I went in and got a drink and what have you. Went to the toilet, and then he comes out and goes, "Oh, Tom, how are you?" "Oh, yeah, not too bad." "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm getting to the game, aren't I?" And he goes, "Oh, do you want to lift with us on the coach?" And I said to him, "I can't leave my car here. It's a company car. It'll get clamped." He goes, "Don't worry about that. Come with us on the coach." I declined, but it's just the kind of bloke he is, and I wouldn't have been desperately popular if I'd have got the car nicked in Lincoln hours from home. But you get that kind of rapport with managers and players where they do get on with you, especially at that level. He's an interesting character, and I think things like that do make it quite worthwhile. You build up that relationship with people, and you benefit from it. So Martin Allen's a particularly amusing chap.
Recently, you were on TV. Could you talk about how that was?
Yeah, that came about through Twitter. I've since joining NewsQuest, a lot of the areas that I cover, we've got a lot of non-league clubs. I tried to count it up the other day. I think it's about 20 that we sort of cover on a fairly regular basis. And that's right down from the conference, which is the highest level of non-league football, to the Spartan South Midlands Division 2, which is some clubs pay but not much, and most of them don't. So it's virtually amateur football. And I've just developed more and more of an interest about it, and so I was invited by the producer, editor, founder, I think all of the above apply, a chap called Michael McCann, to come on a programme called Non-League Chat on Sports Tonight Live. It was great fun. It's something a bit different. I think that's a point of what I've said before. It is, I'm not being paid for it. I'm working for free. I'm doing something different. I'm putting my name out there in terms of a niche area. I'd never considered myself as someone who'd be interested in the broadcasting aspects of sports journalism. At university, I could have done broadcasting modules, but it never appealed to me because I'm not someone that has great kind of store of self-confidence, perhaps, which doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with the job. I often joke that I hate people, which is a bit of a drawback when I'm talking to people all day, every day. It's not strictly true, but there's an element of truth at the core of it. But so it came about through Twitter. He got in contact with me and asked me to come on, and I've been on a couple of times now. Really enjoyed it. As I say, it's something different, and I think the more strings you can add to your bow going forward, the more employable you become. So you can't necessarily afford to be turning down the opportunity to diversify.
Could you describe your working week?
Crikey. Well, I suppose on Monday I get in and check over how teams and individuals got on and sort of plot out what I'm going to do. As I've mentioned, we're centralised, so we have, I think, 16 or 17 titles that we do, the five of us. So I'm responsible for the Enfield Independent, the 3 pages of the Guardian series newspaper, 2 pages in the North London Times newspaper, half a back page of the Harrow Times, sometimes half a back page of the Haringey Independent, sometimes a back page of the Boreham Wood Times, and then whatever I can chip in with on the Watford Observer as well, which is usually a few pages. So there's a lot of planning on a Monday. The rest of the week, I'm sort of knocking out those deadlines one by one. The busiest day of the week is by far Wednesday, when the Guardian series goes in the morning, the Times series goes in the afternoon, and then the Harrow Times goes in the evening. So it's a long week, and then you throw in the added complication of news breaking, which, I can't complain about. That's, what keeps me in a job, but it obviously makes everything harder. And then you have, obviously, sometimes football matches on Tuesday evenings or Wednesday evenings, which can be a nightmare. Strictly speaking, we should come in late the next day if we've had to drive elsewhere. But with my week being the way it is, the Times series has to go on a Wednesday, and I don't start it until a Wednesday. So I can't really come in late on a Wednesday if I've had to work late on a Tuesday night. So it can mean working even later on a Tuesday night to get it done in time for Wednesday, so that I can come in a little bit later so I can get, more than 5 minutes sleep, it feels like. And then by the end of the week, it's Thursday, it's the Watford Observer. Once we've done that, it's time to relax until Friday when I'm preparing for a game on a Saturday. And then that, if I'm away from home, that pretty much takes up an entire day. Yesterday I went to Walsall against Leyton Orient, which isn't a desperately long journey, only took a couple of hours, but by the time I've got there, a couple of hours in advance of kick-off, plus allowed time for traffic, because that is a massive factor in itself, and then done the game, spoken to the managers afterwards, written those quotes up, put those stories online, maybe thought about taking 5 minutes break and having some food, and then headed home. That is a day's work in itself. Sunday, I try and relax, but again, we cover so many teams. They are inevitably playing, so there is inevitably work off the back of that to be done. Today we've got the League Cup final. Spurs are one of our teams, so there'll be work to be done off the back of that. Saracens are playing, there'll be work to be done off the back of that. England rugby playing Ireland, there is work to be done off the back of that because there are Saracens players in the England team. And on top of that, there are teams that have sent in match reports that would light them up by the end of the weekend on our website, rather than waiting until the middle of the week when I might otherwise get to them. So, no rest for the wicked.